Chapter 3. And I said, Hear I pray you, O heads of Jacob, and ye princes of the house of Israel. Is it not for you to know judgment? Who hate the good and love the evil, who pluck off their skin from off them and their flesh from off their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people and flay their skin from off them, and they break their bones and chop them in pieces as for the pot, and as flesh unto within the cauldron? Then shall they cry unto the Lord, but he will not hear them. He will even hide his face from them at that time, and they shall have, as they have behaved themselves ill in their doings. Thus saith the Lord concerning the prophets that make my people err, that bite with their teeth and cry, Peace! And he that putteth not into their mouths, they even prepare war against him. Therefore night shall be unto you, that ye shall not have a vision, and it shall be dark unto you, that ye shall not divine. And the sun shall go down over the prophets, and the day shall be dark over them. Then shall the seers be ashamed, and the diviners confounded. Yea, they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer of God. But truly I am full of power by the Spirit of the Lord, and of judgment, and of might, to declare unto Jacob his transgression, and to Israel his sin. Hear this, I pray you, ye heads of the house of Jacob, ye princes of the house of Israel, that abhor judgment, and pervert all equity. They build up Zion with blood, and Jerusalem with iniquity. The heads thereof judge for reward, and the priests thereof teach for hire, and the prophets thereof divine for money. Yet will they lean upon the Lord, and say, Is not the Lord among us? None evil can come upon us. Therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountains of the house of the high places as the high places of the forests. Chapter 3 explains a great deal of what we see happening today in the life of our countries, life of our churches and religions in some cases. And although Micah is talking about his day, you need to understand that a lot, and I've said this many times before, it goes back to Isaiah and others. They talk about things in their day and use examples of what's happening in their day, and if we are wise, we can see the same things happening in our own days. And we know that the same kinds of consequences that happened in the old times that we are reading about can happen in our own lives, in our own countries. And being forewarned is forearmed, we can do our best to stand up for what is right. Here in verses 1 through 3, it talks about who were the heads of Jacob. Now in our days, they would be the politicians, but in those days they were the current rulers of the nation of Israel. He accused them of hating good and of loving evil. In essence, he accused them of being spiritually, not physically, although maybe there was some of that too, of spiritually being like cannibals and taking the wealth and land and property and freedom away from their people, as cannibals would take the flesh off of the bones of somebody and put it into a pot and break the bones and make a soup and stew out of it. And that these people who were the rulers in Egypt were lovers of great evil. They were morally corrupt to the core. In verses 4 through 10, he's talking about prophets that are false prophets. That they prophesy for hire. They speak the words that their bosses, the rich people who hired them to run the temple in Jerusalem or to prophesy in their country estate or whatever, to put on the airs of being a prophet. We have those people today. We call many of them evangelists in some way, shape, or form. Some other name might apply, but something like that. I saw a news item on the other night about a fellow who became extremely wealthy pretending that he can heal people. And many people made donations and sought healings, but only those people who had illnesses that weren't obvious on the outside and couldn't obviously be disproven that there was a healing were allowed to come up. And he would touch them and they would faint, fake fainting, and they would claim, "I've been healed." And they followed up some of these people and found out they hadn't been. We see that all the time. When I was a kid, 50 some odd years ago, I was watching that on tent revivals on TV. And we still see it today. There are people out there who will do that because it's an easy way to make a living, and they don't mind being sanctimonious, and they don't mind pretending, and they don't mind being fake as long as the check is big enough. And they would only prophesy things that their bosses wanted them to say. They didn't care what the Lord wanted because they didn't know the Lord. They didn't get some of it right because none of it was right, because they weren't right before the Lord. Now, Micah was the true prophet. And his words were not pleasant for the people to hear because the people were morally corrupt. What they needed to hear was that there are problems there. And people don't like to hear that there are problems there. They don't like to know that things are there. But ask yourself this. If you were at home and somebody could tell you, your next door neighbor could tell you that your house was on fire a little bit at the back, but that would mean you had to get up from watching your sports TV game and go out the back and spray the back of your house with a hose and put it out. Would you like to get the bad news that your house had, somebody had set fire to the back of your house while you could still put it out? Or would you rather wait until the fire department showed up and the back 90% of your house was in ashes? The Lord always tries to tell people in advance in ways that will get their attention but give them their agency to choose what to do. And the only time that he actually ever had to judge Israel was when, after all kinds of things happening, Israel just proved they weren't going to listen. And here, Micah was one of the prophets that was called. And he was just death on these prophets priests who teach for hire and the prophets who divine for money. The result of that kind of thing is basically that truth in prophecy would vanish from Israel, and would see to it that these people would be eating and drinking and being merry, while Nebuchadnezzar's army was marching down from Babylon to capture Jerusalem. And these people would have no knowledge of that until he showed up outside of their city. Whereas if they had true prophets, the prophets could have told them what was going to happen before Nebuchadnezzar even left Babylon, and they could have repented if necessary, and the Lord could have protected them as he protected all kinds of others before him. Because there would be no true prophecy, because they would hire their own false prophets, it would be like there was a night with no vision, a day without light. There would be no answers from the Lord when the people would cry to him, because they had ignored him for hundreds and hundreds of years.